Thank you, everybody, for attending today in person and on Zoom and on YouTube. Today is Tuesday, January 31st, 2023. It is currently 1:01 p.m. and we are starting our special council agenda, our meeting today. I'd like to acknowledge that our CAO is on Zoom with us today, so you may not see her on camera here, but she is on Zoom. Thank you. Allison?
Be it resolved that the Township of the Greater Madawaska Council calls to order the January 31st, 2023 special council meeting at 1:02 p.m.
Mover? Council Thompson. Seconder, Council Tripp. All in favor? So moved.
That the agenda of the special council meeting of January 31st, 2023 be approved as presented.
And mover for that, Councilor Popke, second, Councilor Levesque. All in favor? Jeff, are you in favor? Okay, thank you. All in favor, so moved.
The next item is the pecuniary interest, if you want to ask.
Yes, do we have any declaration of pecuniary interest or in the general nature thereof? None seen.
Next item is 3.01.1 stop arm cameras on school buses. A delegation by Kristen Marshall.
Thank you. Kristen Marshall, would you come forward to the mic, turn it on, and identify yourself to us, please.
Hello, my name is Kristen Marshall. I am a proud citizen here in tiny Calabogie. I come before you today with an obvious request, given the fact that we look forward to new horizons with the new council. Our growing community is bustling. We now have 61, and I believe just 2 extras yesterday or last week, 63 students in our school here in Calabogie. And in 2018, when my boys started, there was 41. I think they made 42 and student 43 in total. So all that to say, looking forward to the future is definitely our children and the growth in our community. And that can only be seconded with the need for safety in our community. So given that, that hopeful future for all of those young families, there was a young family in Madawaska that was desecrated with the death of their 5-year-old son, Adam. Adam was in junior kindergarten when the afternoon on February 11th, 2000, he got off the bus and never to enjoy a moment with his family ever again. A car cruised right through the bus's stop sign and hit Adam and killed him instantly. And the family and the school and the community were forever changed. And it robbed him of his future. It robbed his classmates of a fun, bouncy little dude that we all can picture in our own families, right? And I come to you today to ask that we approach the county and we have these stop arm cameras installed in the buses across the Renfrew County. Obviously, safety as a priority is the first thing. Secondly, just to back this up a little bit, if you're not already wooed by me yet, just our bus alone, we have 4 buses that serve our school, from minivan to Rick's Big Bus, as the kids affectionately call him. Rick's Big Bus services the Calabogie tour after it's done the high school run. So Rick does 2 tours a day up Calabogie Road between here and Renfrew specifically. And just that bus alone, he was passed with his either amber lights, red lights, or stop sign out and flashing and stopped for a child 73 times. That is 73 families decimated. That is 73 children, far too many, because we need to be proactive as opposed to once again reactive. And luckily for what has transpired in different communities with the stop arm cameras and the Let's Remember Adam campaign, it has seen many successes for many of the communities that have these installed. And the statistics specifically, I don't have in front of me, But the bus patrol is the company that makes the AIs. They're an artificial intelligence. That is the stop arm camera. And all in all, what I see as the no-brainer here, and I apologize for using, just common vernacular, is that it's no cost up front, but it's far better safety measure guaranteed. So I don't see how we could possibly not explore this and not put this to county, because for our kids, for the safety of our children on an 80-kilometer road stretch, which we all know, Calabogie Road has its own personality. And I understand, there are improvements coming, and that's wonderful, but the stop arm cameras are definitely going to be something that, ensures that this never happens to another family again. Moreover, I would say, I would like to sort of impress upon you the importance of the cost to it as well, because there will be cost to approach the county. There is your time, there are your efforts, which I graciously appreciate more than you'll ever know. I now, as this September, will have all 3 children on Rick's big bus. And I'm very glad for that, a little bit sad for that, for my little wee man to be off in school, but I see it as another measure that we just need to help protect our families, because it's, I don't see no as an option. Let me just put it that way, graciously. And if you had any questions, I don't know if there are any questions at this time about what I'm proposing.
Councillor Thompson?
I just have a question. Who would pay for the, obviously this is a good thing, but where would the funds, would it be the school board or the county? Like, who do we petition?
Fantastic question. And refocusing me, thank you. I go all for heart on it, and the bus patrol company that makes the AIs, the stop arm cameras, will foot the bill for the install. And reason being is where the cameras will be paid for will be on a 60% return of the fine paid. So the person that traverses the stop sign, thankfully not costing the life of a child, is caught by the camera. The camera then sends the owner of the car and the license plate a fine, and that fine, 60% of that fine will go to bus patrol to pay for the cameras, and then the residual 40% of the fine is returned to the municipality in which the infraction took place. So truly, bus patrol working with the Let's Remember Adam campaign in a way to, that's sort of the carrot, so to speak. That is the attractive nature about this, is that there is no requiring a cost and paying it up front out of budgets, because the idea would be that it would be paid back slowly, obviously, through the infractions. And then subsequently, as other school boards get behind this, other transportation consortiums do get behind this, we will see a better return rate. And then hopefully once they're being paid off, unfortunately, because they're caught going through a stop sign of a bus, but those returns will be then put back onto the cost of the actual camera itself. So that's the plan. That's the plan program.
So if I may interject, I believe based on what I've seen, it's actually the Renfrew County Joint Consortium that would install them on their buses through working with their providers, and that's where the funds, it would be at their cost. And that's what Ms. Marshall's here to ask for, is that motion of council to support her endeavors to put to support her presentation she's making to the Renfrew County Joint Transportation Consortium later this month.
That's correct, Allison, and I've also been invited to speak at the Transportation Consortium regarding this matter at their Board of Directors meeting in February. So this special council meeting, thank you, Councillor Levesque, does come quite timely to gain your support, to be able to say that our township is behind this and we want this for our children.
Good.
So basically, all we need to do is provide a letter of support to you or to an organization.
So there's a motion that's actually I have prepared in collaboration with Ms. Marshall that it counts, that will be before council once I read it. And that would be provided to Ms. Marshall as well as sent in a letter to the consortium, advising them of our support of this project.
Okay, thank you.
So with council's indulgence, the motion reads, the council supports Kristen Marshall presenting to the Renfrew County Transportation Consortium regarding the Let's Remember Adam Stop for School Buses campaign, specifically with regard to moving ahead with the installation of stop-arm cameras on school buses.
Do we have a mover? Counselor Thompson, second, Counselor Tripp. All in favor? It's unanimous. I would like to add something to that too, what date are you going to the transportation meeting in February?
I will absolutely advise you of that when I've been made aware,
Okay,
but it is scheduled for the month of February at this point in time. That's what I have.
if I do not have any other meetings at that time, I would like to attend with you.
I would appreciate that greatly.
Okay, thank you, Allison. Allison, you still there? Okay. Could you just make note of that? And Councilor Levesque?
Just one other point for everybody, in doing the research and whether you've not done it or not, this isn't just an isolated thing to Renfrew County, it's across Ontario. And there's many municipalities across Ontario that have already put this in place. So just to note this isn't like we're the first ones or anything like that. We're just part of a larger group of Ontarians who are trying to get this in place.
And I think as council, I'm going to speak for myself, but I believe I'm speaking for council at the same time. I think it's a great initiative. It's an important initiative, and that's why I would like to be there with you and to help present with you.
I appreciate it. I know
If you want the help.
Hey, many hands, many hands. I know
Okay.
just in the North Bay area alone, in the first 17 days of this past school year in September 2022, in the first 17 days, there were 39 infractions. So but it is gaining traction. I'm a proud supporter of the Let's Remember Adam campaign, but also a proud Madawan friend. I have some pretty good roots there in Madawa, and Pierre Ranger and I are in close contact. So as a honorary representative of the Stop Arm Camera campaign, I appreciate it.
And I thank you greatly for your time here today. And it's my understanding you have prior commitments that are coming up very soon. So if you have any other further questions or anything of us, if not, I would thank you and I wish you luck on the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, council and everyone. I appreciate the support, and have a great rest of your day as well. We'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
So moving along to the planning section at 4.01.1, joint rural economic development with Whitewater Region. So the motion before council is that council direct staff to apply for a rural economic development RED program for the purpose of implementing a marketing and promotion campaign. We have applied previously with Whitewater and other municipalities, neighboring or not, on various projects. The province likes to see municipalities working together on projects that can collaborate and find economies of scales. We're very similar in Whitewater. We're having a lot of growth. We are tourists. We've done projects. We did the growth readiness plan together. So this is just the next step as part of that. So I've attached a release that the County of Renfrew provided, and the grant is due on February 23rd. So this is just asking council that to proceed with creating a grant. We did this before, we weren't successful. Ivan from the CAO from Whitewater has a meeting with a grant provider later this week to see that the proposal is in line with the initiative of this program. If council wishes, we can come back at the February meeting with more information as to the grant, as to what exactly the grant will entail and the associated cost. At this time, we don't know because we have yet to meet with the grant coordinator and figure out some more specific details.
Okay. Is there any questions of council? Councilor Levesque?
Just a quick question, Allison, about, there was mention of it's been successful and not successful in different periods. In terms of the successes, what have we, notable things that we've gotten out of this with the partnership, but also with ourselves?
So with the partnership, one was the leg. That was a big endeavor that we undertook, and that was with 7 municipalities. And from that, we just, there's been various outcomes, but the main one is working together. It's breaking down the doors and that we're not all working in our silos. With the growth readiness, it's just we're similar. So they're not doing the same things twice. So we save on funds that we can allocate to either further enhance this project or to allocate at a later date to a different project. So that's why I see the benefit of this is that, you know, we are similar to Whitewater. If it was another municipality that we were as closely aligned with our current status, it wouldn't make sense. But with Whitewater, we are so similar and, you know, we're similar size. We are both experiencing a lot of growth. And there's the tourism component. The tourism in Whitewater, everyone knows Whitewater for their whitewater rafting. There's an agriculture component. We're similar. We have tourism. It's not the same tourism, but if we're able to piggyback off each other to create a campaign that encourages visitors to, you know, visit both municipalities or, you know, any number of items, then I think we should look at those opportunities.
Councillor Tripp, question?
Is there an opportunity to apply for 2 streams? I understand the rationale with the joint application, but there may be opportunities specific to Greater Madawaska. Has there been an opportunity in the past where 2 applications have been made out of the funding envelope? Is question number 1. And then question number 2 was more the micro mechanics. If we are doing a joint application for a product on, you know, retained investment or to attract and expand on business or community information or waterfront infrastructure, I don't see how the joint application can be separated to provide a tool for us as an independent through our growth, as well as to that of Whitewater. So I don't, and I'm sure it's been done in the past, I just don't see how that mechanic happens. So question 1, could we do 2 grant applications if we did one on our own?
So question 1, possibly. There's a session tomorrow that OMAFRA is holding that I'll be able to answer that question afterwards. The reg rate changes a little bit every year, so, and it depends on the stream and the funding. Sometimes we are able to apply for 2. It could be because if we're not the lead on the joint application, then we would be able to apply separately. Sometimes it doesn't matter. If your name's on an application, that's your only one. At this time, I'm not sure, but that's a question I intend to ask tomorrow, or if someone else is attending, I'm gonna have to ask.
Thank you.
Was your second question answered as well?
The second question, I think, will be answered when she has her
Okay.
meetings on the next day, and we'll get information as to how the mechanics. It's really more micro, and I don't think the role at the level of council. It was just a curiosity as to how the 2 blend together, and then at the end product provide a tool for both communities.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there any other questions at this time? Okay. So Allison, the purpose of this right now is to, is there a motion to move it forward, or?
Yes, so the motion was that council directs staff to apply for the Rural Economic Development Program for the purpose of implementing a marketing and promotion campaign.
Okay. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Popke, second. Councillor Levesque. All in favor? That is unanimous. So moved. Thank you.
Thank you, council. The next item is 5.01.1, the 2023 draft budget. There is a motion, but I'm going to hold off until there's been some discussions until reading it, because we're going to have to come back to it anyways.
Okay.
I didn't really make out what you said.
Allison, we're having a little bit of problem hearing you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Sorry. Sorry, I apologize for that. There is a motion before council, but there needs to be discussion that occurs because there's some blanks in the motion as it's currently presented. So we need to have some discussion so I can have an idea of where council would like to go to move this motion forward. So I think if Renee is afforded the opportunity and potentially the library to speak, then we can come back to the motion.
What Allison is saying is that
Thank you.
we'll have the discussion, council will have a deliberation, which the motion will come forward from council's deliberation. And once you all agree, you'll develop a motion on how to direct staff.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you want to read anything? Do you want me to start?
You can
Okay.
take it away.
Okay. There's a bit of a brief report attached to the agenda. The intent of it is simply to open the topic up. Today, councils will be, open the table for deliberation regarding the budget that was presented to you on January 12th and on January 19th at the library. I provided a bit of a summary, a background. This is how it was presented. I do want to clarify, I see there's an error in the report where it says the additional funding for the library is $66,612. It's actually $40,849. So the percentage at the bottom correlates with the 40,849. However, just the wording here for 66,000 is not the correct increase. So what we have is there's two components. There's going to be the township budget and then the library budget. These are treated a bit differently in how they're developed, just based off of the library being operated by a board and being almost like a direct report to council compared to the township staff direct report to council. When developing the 2023 budget, we at the staff level go through a process of, and I think I've explained it before, the managers review prior years and needs to continue service, or if there's a council wish to increase service, it's considered in the budget. From there, as a treasurer, I meet with them. We go through the budget and make sure everything makes sense. We go through with a fine-tooth comb on costs and past trending. So you'll see, at some points, maybe we spent less last year, but trending shows that that's not the norm. So this is all considered. We do a 3 to 5 year variance reporting to build a budget that is meant to not tax taxpayers more than they need to, and to provide funds to operate services that council has adopted. When it comes to the library, it's different in the way that when you receive it at council, this piece behind the scenes doesn't happen with me as a treasurer at the township level. That happens at the board level. So the CEO would develop a budget, and then it would go to the board, and the board would go through those types of scenarios and whatnot to fine tune to present to council. So today what we're doing is opening the floor for conversation and discussion and questions if you have for staff regarding the budget. Again, the same process for the library. And then we're hoping to end today with a motion on how to proceed. This motion can be, depending on the conversation, we could be having a meeting before the 19th or before the 16th of February to fine tune it again if needed, or it will be to proceed to the 16th with direction provided. And I'll open up the floor. Oh, sorry, one more question or one more comment. There has been resident questions regarding the levy increase, stating the levy increase is 10.5%. I do want to clarify that the increase right now for levy is 9.78%. This is, you could see it in the summary sheet. What you're doing is you're dividing the variance of value over the prior year budget. This provides the increase. Levy increase is just basically an increase in revenue through taxation, but 2.95% is growth related. So with growth, we assume roads, we assume more, we have to provide additional services for these residents. So this has to be considered also in the expense side of things. And then I'll open up the.
Any questions from council? Councilor Tripp?
More of a, I think, to start the conversation as opposed to a specific question, but, and this is going to take us into a very high-level strategic discussion as opposed to the mechanics of the core numbers that are in here. But 9.7 is knocking on the door of 10%. And I think our budget that's come forward is quite good. And a lot of work has been done to provide something that's realistic and that recognizes both the services that we have to maintain and then a little bit of work in terms of where we're going to go. But that said, it's still a big ask in today's economy. And my concern or my anxiety going forward is ratepayers who are carrying debt right now are feeling significant pressure from existing rates on increase to their debt carry costs. We're also going to see people in the coming year possibly looking to have to remortgage, and with that there will be additional pressure. So we're in a time now in 23, I think, where people are really going to be pressured if they're not already for finance, and it's going to become worse. And this is our first budget as council, and I recognize we're in a really unusual time because, you know, historically, previous councils have worked really hard to get us past the zero increase, and then they had to readjust and produce budgets that got our services up to speed. Going forward, we need to look, I think, in coming years for growth and around financial growth and around areas of not just service delivery, but also staffing, HR, kind of the soft costs that we're looking at. So our coming budget, not this one, our coming budget, I think, is going to place even greater demands on us. So if there is anything we can discuss or look at to see if we can get a 1.5 or even 2 points off of this, would serve us well in this coming year, but that's a big ask. And I would suggest after conversation, it's something that perhaps staff could take back and look at to see if there is wiggle room or areas where we can not stop services, but push some certain things out. So for example, the discussion around bringing in a staff person for tourism, recreation, not to say we negate that activity, but if we could push that out into the fourth quarter, we'd save 0.5 point, or maybe 2/3 of a point. There may be other elements within this with the time to go back, and then also with the library budget included in this, is there a discussion that we could have? Because at 47,000, that's almost a percentage of the increase. And then I also think the other thing we have to talk about is this 9.7 reflects our levy. It also has money attached from growth revenue, which is really the true story of what we're spending. The levy is really the taxes that we're asking our ratepayers to pay. But on top of that, they'll also be asked for an education tax, which I understand is probably held at zero. But we also have the county going through the same exercise, and that too will be placed on top. So while we're talking in this about a $23 increase as presented per 100,000, that's only the rate for the Madawaska levy. We also have to attach to that whatever levy council the county comes in with. So it won't be the 23, it could easily be a $40 increase per 100,000. And considering the rapid rise in our property assessed values and the mill rate relationship to that, it could be significant dollars into a community where people that are carrying debt are already struggling, and I'd suggest that's a big part of our community. So that was just really to frame the discussion when we get in to how do we look at this in terms of just line item or placing ourselves strategically, where do we want to land this year, knowing that we're going to come into 23, 24 with even greater demands on our revenue stream. So thank you.
I think also too, we need to take a look. how we've been doing this in the past. And we've been moving with the inflation rate at 2.5 or approximately at that, and which has allowed us to keep up with what we're doing and not provide growth for the community. And our community is growing, and there are things that we need to move forward. And we have on our asset side of things, we have some assets that are becoming to the end of their lifespan, and I think we need to take into account the quality of living that we have here. And I think part of it, because in the past we've just been moving at the rate of inflation and no growth point. I think we need to look towards the future for the betterment of the community going down the road. I agree with you. Yes, we're all ratepayers here. We're all taxed, but at the same time, our job as council is to move the township forward. So I understand that the staff here management of the staff have gone through their processes, and I think we do have to trust in their expertise as well, and their understanding of what is required to move us forward. I totally agree with you that this is very tough times, but it's also very tough times on our township as well. So I think if we want to visit it, those are some of the holistic ideas we need to look at as well. That yeah, we need to progress. We need to replace some assets, and that's part of our capital costs and so on. So I think we can revisit it with your thoughts in mind, but I think we also need to look at the growth of this community and the infrastructure thereof, whether that being within connectivity issues or anything. So I think, yes, we need to take it into account. We also need to grow this town and township. And supplemental?
I'll be very quick. I agree. I'm not against growth. In fact, I embrace it and cherish it, and we do need it. I'm just suggesting we're in a very unusual time financially, and while growth is happening and should continue, and this budget should support growth, we should also look if there are areas of growth that we can postpone a little bit that won't really impact the day-to-day service. And that was really my suggestion, that when staff go back for another round of this, it's not to inhibit growth. There's that delicate balance. Are there things like the engagement of a new staff person that we could push out a few months? And 4 months, again, would give us about 0.5% off of this 9.75. So growth is I'm 100% supporting it. It's just, are there elements in here that we can push forward a little bit without causing a significant negative impact on our community, knowing that the next budget is going to be strong in growth because we have some things that we need to address over the next 12 months. It'll impact us the following year.
If I may, I respectfully disagree that if we're going to push this budget out, or if we're going to push it to future years, we're pushing out services. These are services that during the campaign and since this council's been elected, that staff have been asked to consider new projects. And by cutting this budget after it's been reviewed and vetted, and I think we're going to be exactly where we were at the beginning of this year. We're not going to be able to provide any additional services. We're not going to be able to take on any additional projects. We need to start being progressive and aggressive in moving forward. If we're not going to move forward, then people aren't going to want to come here. We need to be ready, and the growth is here now. And with the comments regarding the county's rate is going to increase, so we should decrease our ask. I don't think that's a fair assessment, because why should our ratepayers lose on services because of the county's asking too much? If the county's asking too much of our ratepayers, that is the role of the mayor, who's our representative at county council, to say, no, this is too much, because we at the lower tier, we need to take advantage now. It's our turn to move forward and have these funds so we can provide the services needed by our ratepayers. And the final comment I have at this time, because I'll have more, is with regard to the tax rate and the assessment. We're working off an assessment from 2016. So that's until the new assessment comes in, that's not changing. So as the assessment comes down, the tax rate will potentially go down with all the growth. So it's a balancing act. So it's not the assessment's going to go up and we're going to stay at the tax rate we're at today. So just to clear that, any confusion up with regard to that, and Renee can speak further to that to clarify. But those are my comments for now. Is I think we need to take a good look and see what is it we want to do today and in this for 2023. Because by suggesting, well, you know, we can look at pushing off to 2024. Well, we have plans already for 2024, and we're just going to be pushing it off, and we're never going to get caught up to our neighbors who have much more financial. Well, their taxes are significantly higher than ours are, and they're able to do projects. We're doing projects in-house. We have staff doing multiple roles that aren't existing at other locations. So we need to consider all those factors when considering this budget.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Thank you, Allison. That's quite true. We have a wonderful tool that is in development, and that's the asset management plan. Excuse me. And it's now at the stage, and thank you very much for answering my questions, where a lot of the assets were being assessed at first for current condition, and do they need to be fixed, and when do they need to be fixed? The next phase will be to allow the growth component, and it really to assess the value of the service versus the cost of maintaining it. For instance, one of the reasons I asked about what it costs to return a road to gravel, which is $36,000 per kilometer, is because we have plans to fix roads to a level where we won't have to fix them again for a while, upgrade them. But roads, for instance, Hudson Lake Road, which is scheduled for $248,000, I believe, it's 1.6 kilometers long. It's tar and chip right now. There's one farm and it's a dead end, one farm and one cottage on that road. And we're planning on spending $248,000. I don't think that road deserves that level of service. If it was a through road to a subdivision, yes. So we're just starting as a township, as Renee let me know, to do things like count traffic on roads, and use those sorts of things to help us make decisions. So I think we can go through the budget and ask those questions. Another one is the flat road, and I forget, I think it's mostly flat road. Have we assessed, I'm sure the road needs repairing, but have we assessed whether or not we want that road to become a faster, or people, a better road so people can go faster? Do we have the traffic requirements? So that's a $500,000 upgrade. We should, I don't know if we can continue patching for another year. I don't know what the situation is with it. But until we really have an assessment of the value per investment, like these are investments, what return will we get from that investment? Where maybe there are options that we can look at that until we know for sure that we'll get a good return, we either put off, continue to patch, or return to gravel. Like we have decisions we can make that could save us a few points.
Okay, and just to clarify, so in regards to the budget, what are you proposing then?
I suggest that in cases where staff is proposing an outlay, that they do the studies first to see if it's really necessary. I mean, I had other questions of why are we paving cul-de-sacs with, I always forget, LH something. Anyhow, HL4, which is the asphalt, the
Quality of it.
quality stuff, which is more expensive. And it made sense because the plows are turning, our own plows are turning there, and the tar and chip just doesn't last. So it makes sense to invest there. So those sorts of things, maybe look at those couple of roads. And if you're just upgrading it because you want to make it the way it was before, then consider, is this the way we want it to be for the future? Those kinds of assessments.
Okay, so.
Does that answer?
Yep, and I would defer to our roads department, and but I assume when they are doing, and you know what happens sometimes when you assume, that they're highly qualified staff, and I think that they wouldn't be putting things forward if there wasn't a necessity. So basically, what they've put forward, I assume that they've done some studies, but we'd like some more visibility into that, is what I'm getting from you?
I would like to know, yes, what basis is the $248,000, what to upgrade to LH4 asphalt on Hudson Lake Road, when it could be returned to gravel and graded once in a while, like on a regular, whatever basis is required, until such time as it's needed.
I am not an expert.
So if I may, that has been done. There's reasons that for the road projects that are put forward with regard to Hudson Lake Road. If we were to move that back to gravel, we would have the grader on that road every week when it rains. Due to the hills in that area, that assessment's already been done. If we we're not moving it to HL4, which is asphalt, we're moving it to tar and chip, which is a lower cost. And this will keep the road for probably 20 years because it is a low traffic road, and the operating costs associated with grading it on such a regular basis just doesn't make sense to continue in that way. And Steve can speak further to that. And as for studies, when we were doing the asset management plan, there were a number of considerations taken. We had a street scan completed in which a car that looks like the Google car drove our roads to do assessments on cracking, potholes, any number of components. And that was all incorporated and considered in our asset management plan when looking at what roads we should do in the priority. So we have done that. But Steve can speak further to why we wouldn't move Hudson Lake Road to gravel. But is the ask of council that we go back and look at every capital project to provide evidence or supporting documentation on why we're putting it forward?
I think what we need to do as well is understand the expertise we have working for us, and that the reliability and the responsibility of them, it's their jobs, and they have the expertise. And as I say, the word assume comes up again, but our departments, our employees, I believe are above reproach, and I don't think that they would be putting something towards us without doing the proper documentation and paperwork ahead of time and research. I think we have to trust their expertise because, quite frankly, I've painted on a road before, but I've never actually built a road or have no understanding of how to build a road or the engineering that goes with it. And that's why I have to rely upon our staff. And I'd ask Steve just to speak briefly if you have any input.
Just one mention, like I don't know where the numbers came from for the amount of people that live in there, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different families living in that road. Off of that, there's 1, 2, 3, 7 different households altogether. And it's been normal practice here that when we redo a road, we do the road to the standard it was. So it already was surface treatment. But then we also do upgrades. So there's a few different areas in there that have very steep ravines that people could slide off of the road. So when we do capital projects, we do stuff like guardrail to bring it back up to standard and take a liability away from the township in that area. And bringing that road back to gravel, it's not just a matter of the maintenance and of grading it, it's also the gravel doesn't stay there. So you're adding gravel. Every 2 years, you'll be re-graveling that section of the road, especially where the hills and the bad curves are. It just washes away into the ditches, so you put more layers and layers on.
If I may.
Supplemental?
I could be wrong, but I thought in the asset management plan, it showed it as being turned to asphalt, not resurfacing.
No, LCB. That's surface treatment.
Yeah, I thought it was an upgrade.
The
So that does
next
make a
section of
difference.
Madawaska Road on the
Yes.
was upgraded. Yes, all the busier roads were upgraded to HL4.
Okay, and Flat Road is,
Flat Road was one of the roads that previous council agreed that they'd like to bring up to standard. So Ferguson Lake is a connecting road with Flat Road. So that is a busier section of road. So they were hoping to, in the next stages, bring that to asphalt because the surface treatment isn't lasting. So that's why Ferguson Lake was brought up to asphalt. And that was to continue that road through to Dacre, was to upgrade it in sections to asphalt.
okay. Well, I guess you got it all under control.
Yeah, I think,
Thank you.
sorry, I think that we're sort of getting into the weeds a bit, and I think the overlying, the overlying part is we have great staff. And part of the budget is they've analyzed it, they've worked with Renee, they've worked with Allison, and they've put it forward to us. And as I say, I don't have expertise that Leonard has, or Stephen has, or Chris has. I don't have that expertise, and I think we, as a township and as a group, we need to trust the staff with the expertise. We can question, no doubt, we can question, but I think too, it's they have a great understanding, and we need to be supportive of what they're doing, but also question as well. But when it comes to the budget, I think, I say Renee and Allison, I think they've gone through that whole process, and I think they've probably asked these questions of Steve and Leonard and Chris prior to it getting to us, because it's their reputation that's on the line. It's quite frankly, it's their name that they're putting out there, and they've highly qualified, and I think we need to entrust them with the roles that they do. So that's my personal thoughts on that. Yep. Renee Mass?
I just thought I'd pull off on the asset management plan a bit, just for process. And you've referred to it a few times. You could see that some of the roads, you see Madawaska Road there, and we're just starting the planning this year, but the asset management plan had the road work being completed this year. A big component for that bit of a shuffle is pricing for moving it to HL4. The cost implications compared to the asset management plan, we can afford it financially. So those decisions will come through also, and you'll see sometimes we'll be moving items off of the asset management plan. The other piece, I think that this 10-year asset management plan came to the old council to bring to 2023, allow us to move forward with 2023. Once this budget is approved, I will be coming to council with the updated 10-year, which will remove 2023 and add a year. This will be a good opportunity to discuss those pieces. Also, because you'll be able to see why we're moving from LCB to HL4 for other years. why we're choosing to do these roads on this year, and we'll be having a conversation because council will adopt this 10-year based off this discussion. So we'll also provide you more information. So then going into the other budget years, you'll also understand why we're coming in a certain direction, and we'll understand what your expectations are of us.
Councillor Levesque, you had a question?
Just a couple of points. In summary, I guess the one thing is you mentioned about staff being, our expertise and so on. The big piece of that is the process itself that supports that, which is the asset management plan in this case. So I think that those two things together work well, and I can only assume that, back to your point about assumption, that when things do come up when you're for review and deliberation, you're going to relook at that regardless of what's on the plan anyways, because things do change. There's new areas that need attention, and it'll require adjustment. So I know it's not written in stone, but I think the other thing that I'm maybe hearing as well is the, back to your point, Renee, about how things are communicated to council so that you can kind of anticipate what those questions might be. Like, how did you get here? What decisions did you make to get here? And so that kind of takes those questions away before we even ask them. And that's maybe part of it as well. Because it's not just us, it's all often people out there that are asking the same questions, like, why did this road get paved when, this one with 100 people on it didn't get paved, that kind of stuff. And there's always a reason for it. And the question is, what are those reasons? The other point too, with what Councillor Tripp mentioned, I think budgeting is a tricky thing. It's sometimes very clinical and straightforward. Sometimes it can be creative. So, and I think back to Rob's point, being creative in our thinking is also helpful. So in other words, if we can, let's just say for argument's sake, instead of doing something in Q2, if we move to Q3, what's the impact of that on the overall budget, right? So that's just a small example. It doesn't mean we're not going to do it. It just means maybe we defer it a little bit longer and we get a little bit back on the other end. So just it's a creativity aspect of doing the budgets, and I think maybe that's part of it as well. So it's more just a statement of kind of what we see.
Any further questions or comments at this time? None seen. Allison, do we have a motion?
So,
I didn't think so.
no, not really. So
I didn't think so.
Yeah, sorry, Allison, the conversation about the library should also happen before we develop and then council will be developing the motion of how you want us to proceed.
Okay. Councillor Tripp has a comment, question?
Just before we get to the library, so when we started this, and as Councillor Levesque said, I think where I was coming from is the opportunity, are there efficiencies by moving certain things out into a different quarter, which would impact what we have before us, and respecting all of the work and the professionalism and the knowledge that's gone into this. I just want to reiterate, it's a very strong budget, but are there areas where we can do a quick re-glance at it one more time to see if there's an opportunity, even if we could pull 30,000 out of the bottom line, is that 1% that we're looking for? And even, I mean, I'm going to get really micro here, but just on budget line 32,350, which is signs and guardrails. In 2022, the budget was for 15,000, and again for this budget 15,000, but the expenditures have been 5,000. So there's 10 grand sitting there in that line item. And I'm not suggesting we do massive revision. It's just if it's 5 grand and we reflect it at 5 or even at 7 or 8. If we have 10 of those line items in this massive budget, we could get that 1 point, which is all, I think it would be very helpful for our residents, and that's not impacting services, it's just realigning it to actuals. And it's not a lot of those, but there's enough that I think a second quick run through with this new strategic thinking around it, not impacting services, not impacting growth, but just a way to kind of pick up bits and pieces to get us down to, even if we're 1 point off, 2 may be ambitious. That was my initial thought, but I'm hearing that may be a bit aggressive. Maybe we'd look at seeing if we can get a point. We talked with the library board as well. I keep asking this, but I recognize, Allison, that there's no wiggle room with hydro. But while we've been increasing every single year and putting pressure on our ratepayers, we're not seeing that shared responsibility from hydro, and that's frustrating. And I don't know if it's our ask, it's the way it's been, or if it's written into legislation, but do you think another approach through a different voice would help, or is it just legislation?
So I think it's just legislation, in all honesty. We tried to do a joint approach with other municipalities. Wawa, I believe, has 8 power dams, and they have also approached with no success. The province a few years ago actually looked at cutting the program by 1/3. So that would have had an enormous negative impact on we were able to petition that, and they scrapped that portion of proposed legislation. We can try, but I don't think we may be successful, and it never hurts to try to highlight it, but we haven't to date. And I completely agree with you that if they kept up, this would be a very different situation. With regard to cutting it by 1 point, I'm not quite sure I understand what's going to be achieved by cutting it by 1%, because Renee, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but the impact to the ratepayers would be very minimal, would it not, on $100,000 assessment?
Yes, the impact for 1% is $4.22 a year.
So to ask staff to go back and revise and say, let's look at the signs and guardrails, you're not looking at a year-end statement. So that could be, it needs to be accrued, it needs any number of things. Or it could be, there's a big storm that wipes out a bunch of our signs, or any number of things. Like, to cut those operating lines, I think we're just shooting ourselves in the foot to try and get to a specific number. And I'm not sure if it's going to make that big a difference in the public's eye, if it's $4 and change on $100,000 assessment.
Yeah. And I'd just like to also comment for the hydro in lieu of payment. Now, don't quote me on this, but from what I remember reading of the legislation, there's a key word in there that we need to be very careful of. And the word is may. They may pay. It's not an obligation by them for the lieu in payment. It's a may pay. And I think we need to be very careful on how we approach that. If they go, all right, let's not pay. So I think we need to have a holistic view of that and say, okay, when you're poking at a balloon that's full, how far can you poke before it pops, right? So I think we need to just have an understanding that it hasn't progressed, and that it frustrates me that it hasn't progressed as quickly as it or in line with everything else. But we also have to understand too that it's a may pay, and I'm going from memory on that with reading the legislation, but I believe that's what it says. Correct me if I'm wrong, but probably Renee has a better understanding of that than I do.
I just wanted to reiterate the piece about this component, because it's not just for us, it's calculated province-wide the same way. I worked in 2 other municipalities before coming here. It's a decade of the fight for increasing hydro dam revenues for taxation. Every municipality was doing it that I worked for. When Allison speaks to when they were getting together to try to push to increase this, it was a province-wide municipal push, and the only response is that there's a possibility it would be cut more. So there hasn't been not successful in that way. With that said, when we have these types of infrastructure in the area, they come with a company attached to them. There's opportunity for the township to have discussions with the company on assisting with some services or some items to support the township. So maybe it's in that way versus taxation.
Thank you. Any supplementary or any questions? Supplementary?
It's just to close down my my long-winded speech at this, so I apologize to council for raising all of this, but I appreciate your comment about hydro and Allison's point that it's been tried, so I don't think we need to reopen that door. It's one of the things of being at a new council and sitting at a table first time. It's all new for us. And I appreciate your comment that 1 point is only $4. So it's not a hill, I think, to die on. It's just points that I wanted to raise that I think going forward, we really need to be aware and conscious of the financial pressure that our ratepayers are going to be facing this coming year. And people are starting to get very nervous of how they are going to make ends meet. So anything we can do at this table to keep services flowing, but be very mindful of the pressure that they're going to be under this year, and again, increasingly next year, was my approach. So I appreciate the input, and I think, Allison, you've raised some very good points. It's just that balancing act. So I'm, my hope was, and we have to defer now to the discussion on the library, but on the budget, excluding library, I kind of, ideally, I thought it would be nice to have one more look at it, but if what we feel is it's good, I will support that flowing from the group.
Just on that last point, I think it's going to be important that our messaging is clear about why things are happening the way they are, especially for impact on other people. But back to your point, Rob, impact on our costs as well. And I think people out there know what that does to every business, every person, and it's all happening to everybody. And it's got to come from somewhere, but we can't stay stagnant and flat. So.
And I think just this discussion that we've had here today is a great transparency and openness to our community, saying, yeah, we're open to discussion. We're open to, we may not all have the same opinions, but we can come together for the betterment of the township and move forward. But also everybody is understanding that we're taking everybody's concerns and our own concerns into each thing we do. And I think the fact that we've had this open conversation today is a great example of that things aren't done arbitrarily. They're for a purpose. And sometimes we may not all get along, but we come together for the betterment. So thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments at this time before? Nope, Councilor Thompson.
Yeah, I know it's always a difficult balance between what level of service we need to provide and how much money we have to provide that service. And the only way to reduce that is to reduce the service. And I don't think we want to do that, especially as we're growing. We're investing in the future. And I think this was a valuable discussion because I came in, I know where we're going to save some money. And, the idea of saving money, well, let's go for 1%, but where are you going to take it from? So, yeah, it is what it is.
Okay, thank you. If we have no other questions or comments, anything?
Just, I don't know if you were closing it off or if there was any questions regarding the library, we were moving to that topic. Yes, okay.
Yeah, I thought we would move into the library now. Thanks for keeping me in check. That's what we're all here for. Okay, so Renee, would you like to do the introductions into the library for us?
So I don't know if you want to, yeah, you might as well. So then if there's a question, then you could.
Do you need another seat or?
Yeah, did you want to join?
Nope.
Did you want to pull up the chair or did you? So we have the Ruth, the CEO, and Patty, the board chair, for any questions we have regarding the library.
Thank you. And if you just introduce yourselves so that people on Zoom and YouTube can get to know you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ruth. I'm with the Greater Madawaska Public Library as CEO.
Hi, I'm Patty MacArthur. I'm the board chair for the library.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Do we have I'm trying to find it on my,
I think we're just opening it up, just similar to Township side of things. If anybody has any questions
Okay.
regarding the budget, there's currently it's just the reports together. So it's just if you have anything you would like clarification on.
Lois, Councillor Thompson, sorry?
When you're looking at the 44-some thousand dollars increase, we have to keep in mind that that is, first of all, the library is one of our most important assets. It's a draw for people, young families, especially situated in a school, and to make it a better service for the whole township. I love what you've been doing and the board has been doing to try to bring more services throughout. And I'm not talking about book lending. That's been happening. You can order them online, they be delivered. But all the other services, the continuous learning, adult learning, bringing in guest speakers, a cultural, BIAC, I don't know what that acronym stands for, but it's an Indigenous cultural thing, science kits for the kids, that should be available for all areas, story time in Madawaska. And I'm sure there are some young mothers who would like to be able to take their children to story time in Madawaska. So it looks like why, they've been existing as a library since the 70s. Why this change, and it's because of that. So I am in support of that need.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? None seen, then I'll make a couple on my own. Oh. Would you like me to say my little speech here first? Okay. So I think one of the things that was brought up was that we are having more children brought into this community. I'm not sure what our numbers were 4 years ago when the prior council first sat, compared to, I understand now from Kristen Marshall that we have 63 children now. And I'm not sure what the increase of the school was from 4 years ago when the prior council first sat down to now. But we definitely see that we have more children, we have more seniors here, and the library is a great resource and learning center, just not a library to take a book out, it's a learning center. And I think we have to understand that we have something that's, I think there's only one other library in Ontario that's called a learning center as well. And so we have something pretty unique here, and we have good leadership, and I'd like to see it grow. Because the need is there for it, and the growth. I think over the past few years, as I say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that the library budget has progressed in earnest with the rest of society. And I think we're seeing the need. I understand that the hours are different, the responsibility and the impact on the staff has changed as well in that time period. And I think I'd just like to commend you for a great job, and I will now turn it over to Jeff, Councillor Levesque.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, so for me, I guess when I was questioning Renee about a few things kind of came up just in a general budget scenario. So the service and all the great work you do is kind of a separate thing, and we all recognize that. So I just want to be clear that we all do recognize that. So when we talk about the increase in services and things that you're proposing, it's the same thing that I used to ask my staff is, what are we going to get out from it? And also, how are we going to know that? So do we have measurements, success measurements for these things that you're putting in place? If they're a one-time thing, what do we see at the end of it? It's the same thing with any one of us here. What do we see at the end of it? So whether we buy a new truck or pave a road, what do we see out of those kinds of things? So one of the things I asked Renee was about what are our measurement criteria for some of these things, particularly the new items, the existing items. And I think Patty, you and I discussed about how I think up to a year or two ago, we were submitting stuff to the province for measurement. There's a standard measurements that are submitted by libraries to the province so that you can run comparisons and determine where do we stand against other libraries in the province? And one of the questions I had was, have we or are we going to resume those measurements so that we can get a sense of where things are at? You have provided some statistics, which is great. And I don't know how they compare with the provincial type of metrics that used to be in place. So that's one question I had.
Oh, we have to report annually. They do a statistical report. So we do submit statistics to the province.
Yeah, but I think when I looked, it wasn't there for whatever reason, and maybe it was submitted, but maybe it wasn't uploaded. But so if that's the case, then it should show up at some point so we can get a sense of what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get reports on the cost. And what I generally do and what Ruth does is we can go through the reports, and I did pull some reports around other libraries that are in communities of the same size, because there's no use looking at metropolitan Toronto or anything like that. We want to look at something that's very much like ourselves. And we're tracking certainly our salary rate, even though that is the bulk of the ask this year because of the increases to maintain pay equity. It is in the middle. So, for the township, we are sitting right there in the middle of what everyone else in Ontario is doing. So I think that's a good measurement for the township and the pay equity exercise. Excuse me. And that number is, as you say, what that number is. There are measurements that the government does not take that we take. So we do look at the number of people that are coming in. We are looking more closely at the demographic. We're also looking at programs like the backpack program that we mentioned the last time that can spur a bit of economic growth, tourism, and get people interested in doing some of the things that we heard, especially during the election campaign. Let's start looking at the environment and spreading some of that down at the ground level, especially with the kids, and being able to understand our community better and get people involved in it. So we are looking to partner up when we get our program going this year, which does have a little bit of overhead costs that you won't see in the budget next year. Not a lot, but a little bit. But we will be going to some of the organizations that are on the waterfront to see if they want us to host in that area. And if we host in that area, we're bringing people into maybe an Oella's or Pine Valley Restaurant, or maybe we do it during a weekend when DACA is having a session, so more people come. So we're looking to partner up with the community as well. And that's part of the measurement we're looking at, being a greater part of the community and outreaching that way and spurring more people to come out. We do have a lot of library memberships that come our way during the summer. So people want a book. They often come to the book sale because they'd rather not get a library membership and buy a book that if they drop in the water, it's okay. Right. So our book sales and things like that, people come in who have cottaged here for years, and people who don't have maybe the best internet will come in and get the DVDs because they can play DVDs, movies, things like that. So we do look at all of those things, and we look at the hours that we're open, and we look again at the demographics.
Okay. Thank you for that. One of the other questions I had was percentage of fundraising against other expenses. So I notice in the line item, it's now combined with fundraising and donations, but the fundraising piece, I don't know if that's gone up or down over the last few years, and whether it's a percentage of some greater number. And, do we increase that over time, or does it stay flat, or how do we account for that?
Well, that's a good question. And most libraries don't do fundraising unless it's for something in particular. We took a commitment last year to do fundraising because we felt, oh gosh, we're coming out of COVID, and, where we were very flat and very low and returning money to the township, that we also wanted to try and keep our costs down and not say, oh, all of a sudden it's this much money. So we took on fundraising and more donations. So it's not like there's going to be something new in the library. That's to actually offset operations. And yes, we did increase it this year. And when we talked a little bit earlier about how people gone back to the drawing board, Lois can tell you, our own board did not approve the first budget, and we went back and we sharpened the pencils again, and took another really hard look, because we are sensitive, as we're all taxpayers, that we don't want to increase on anything that we don't have to. So we've looked very carefully at it and took quite a bit off, actually, and shaved it back. So most of our increase is really staffing time, and it's really hard to cut that and still be able to deliver services in multiple locations. There's things like, and it's just the simple things that when you get over a certain number of hours, somebody's got to have a lunch break. And that's where some of those things come in, where now you have 2 people instead of 1 person. And also the number of people coming to the library.
Yeah.
I hope
That's all I have for now.
helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Councillor Tripp?
Not so much a question, more of a comment, and I agree with what has been said at the table in terms of the importance of the library and learning center in the community and the growth. And I've experienced firsthand some of this with Ruth, the CEO, taking on the pancake breakfast as one example this year. And it was a huge financial success for them. And that was really one of the first signs I've seen of stepping up to the plate and really getting involved. And it was an anxious moment for them because it was new and they had no idea what kind of return, if any, they would have. And I think they walked out with $1,800-ish, a significant amount of money, more than I think any of us expected. And I can see that coming on as an annual event. There may be an opportunity, and this is really for Allison's discussion, but we had the conversation about the REM application, and it kind of alluded to, could we do a separate independent one? Is there something
Can I
that the
interrupt for
town?
1 sec? Just for the people listening and on YouTube, can you break down the acronym REM?
I'm going to say musical group, but that would be wrong.
It's RED.
Red,
Okay.
sorry, red.
Yeah. Rural Economic Development Program.
Okay,
Thank you, Allison.
thank you. That's,
Know where my head was.
yeah, and do you notice how I polished it off? Could you please tell everybody out there, because I didn't know what REM was.
And Allison came in to help us all. Thank you, Allison.
Okay.
But I don't know if you're looking at an independent application, but if there's anything we could do to support or perhaps lend a name to, because that grant application talks about growth, economic development, entrenching in a community, building prosperity. And you've certainly shown that over the last year with, although your numbers, your fundraising is not a huge percentage of your budget, it is significantly higher than it was pre-COVID, and then through COVID, obviously nothing. So I think you have taken the right first step, and maybe there's a way that either the township or through RED, there may be opportunities to help pick up going forward that part of the budget that needs to grow, because it will be increasingly difficult for us to keep increasing funding, because you've heard the pressures we've had in our budget discussions today. But maybe there are ways we can help in terms of enhancing your infrastructure to bring in additional funds, either through grants or through fundraising initiatives.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions, comments, concerns at this time? Councillor Levitt, supplemental?
Just one final, I guess, question, and this is always a question I ask, is the things that have been asked for, are there any things in there, and you mentioned you've already gone back, sharpened your pencil and so on, are there things that you feel are optional or could be cut back to reduce the impact, that kind of scenario? Or is it all or nothing?
Sorry, if we cut it, well, like Lois said, I guess if you cut staff time, you cut services, we could cut, we were looking at family movie nights, for instance, but that would be a a program that would require some existing resources, I think, in the township. If you have a screen here that we can borrow, we could cut that from the budget, that kind of thing. So there's some small items like that, but again, the majority of our budget's staffing, and it's just 10,000 in operations, I think, more than previously that we're asking for.
Right, but there's new things being requested, right? Out of
There
the
are some
budget,
new
right?
things being
So out of the
requested.
new items, like, so it's very much like this, the township budget, there's the base services that you've operated over a number of years, and it's increased and changed and so on. And then there's new programs that you want to introduce to get a sense of, increased community engagement or whatever the rationale might be. The question is, out of those new items, what are items in there that could potentially be changed or reduced or deferred or anything like that?
Anything's possible. We can
Yeah.
shuffle things around. It just depends on what, I guess, what you want to see going forward.
Well, that's a real question for you guys, right?
Yeah,
You
there
know,
there
how
really weren't
important are
any
some of those
extra things that we're buying. And that's the issue. I mean, we're having the same issues around mileage and postage and those sorts of things. I think certainly great credit to Renee and Allison that our rent didn't go up significantly. It was very flat this year, and that was very welcome. But we're sort of stuck with the same thing. We can't do anything about communication costs because the bell bill is the bell bill. There's really not a lot of extra stuff in this budget. Like last year, we got a new printer and we got it through a grant. So when we do look at those bigger things, we're looking to see how we can get them with some help or free if possible. And nobody spends more time in the dollar store than Ruth. So
That's true.
I think the difficulty that people may see is over the last couple of years, it's gone up quite a bit, right? So 22% in 2022, 38% in 2023. Prior to that, it was 1% and then flat. So it's a different kind of conversation, and how do we communicate what the needs are and get that across so that people understand what that is, but also what the impact of that 38% is on their taxes as well. Back to Rob's point.
absolutely. And I think, in all fairness, when we were shut down during COVID, we had one staff member. So when you see those increases, they bounce up quite quickly because we're coming back up to staff level. So we're coming back up to the levels of staffing that we should be at. And the number of hours that we should be at. So it has been a rise, and that's why, as I say, we took on the fundraising and the donations to say, well, the people who are using the library are the ones who are absolutely the ones that are providing the fundraising dollars and the donations. So, we thank the public for saying, yes, you should exist and for helping us. And we put that against the bottom line. So we are contributing to the bottom line where we can. And the provincial grants that we have, they haven't gone up in 15 years, which is a little sad. So we do need to look at more opportunities for grants where we can.
I do want to just point out, so the increase in that, and Patty's right, the increase is more on the salary side than anything. And then that increase isn't necessarily due to pay equity versus increase in hours and services. Yeah. So I think that's where he's reaching out right now, is more of highlighting the additional service that comes, like the return on investment, really.
Okay. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. To put things in perspective about the increases, when did you start on, and when did it become the library and learning center as opposed to the old building with books that we had before? So what, we're seeing an increase. When did it all start?
2020.
So that explains why it's going to cost more to do more and get more service and include the community, et cetera. So that makes sense.
And I think too, in supplemental to that too, if you figure it started as moving into the learning center in 2020, and then was interrupted by COVID and no staffing required, or one staff member at that time, as mentioned that, yes, you're going to see an increase because they have to get back up to staffing levels. So that's my interpretation. Okay. Is there any other questions or comments at this time? No, none seen, or, oh, Councillor Tripp.
Just on understanding the path forward. So are we going to go into a motion for this in the budget? Are we going to look at going back to onto the library? Are we comfortable with this? Is that?
I think we're going to be moving into a motion.
Okay, perfect.
If I'm correct on that, is correct me, CAO, Allison, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay.
So based on what I've heard, and I believe the motion is that council directs the treasurer to present the final 2023 budget at the regular council meeting of February 26, 2023 for council to review and adopt.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Popke, all in favor? Unanimous? So moved.
Thank you, council.
I thank you for your time today. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
All right. So now down to what we actually decided to meet about.
You were just breaking up there, Allison, sorry.
Oh, I said, now what we're actually here to meet about.
Okay, well, no, we're here to meet about all this, but.
We started with one item and then next.
Okay.
We're just multitasking. So I did receive, and you'll have to let me know if I'm breaking up. I did receive feedback on priorities and missions. They came in various forms. Sometimes it was some objectives, sometimes it was just keywords that were felt to be important. So what I've done is, if I can share my screen, I've made a little PowerPoint and I have shared it with you.
She sent it while we were in meeting.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I just need to move this. And so if I go to, okay. So I started with, so this is a proposed mission, and I recognize that it's long, but I figured this was a good starting point to have a discussion. I'm not going to read it to you because you can all read.
Excuse me.
So I recognize this is long, and I apologize if you need more time, just let me know. I recognize this is a longer mission statement, but this is a draft, and I wanted council to recognize that if they did put forward a comment or a key phrase or even a mission statement, that all the thoughts were being accumulated within this one mission statement. So my only suggestion would be is that this is too long, and that that the mission statement end after successful growth, and not add the component about the infrastructure based on comprehensive asset management plan, because that's essentially addressed earlier in the statement. So what I'm proposing is that the mission statement is to provide an inclusive, safe community for all residents, businesses, and visitors by providing services in a cost-effective and transparent manner to encourage sustainable and future successful growth.
I agree that we could cut it off at growth because the continued improvement in infrastructure base on the comprehensive asset plan is actually an operational component of that. I would like to see, and I'll leave it open to everybody else, to provide an inclusive, engaged, safe community. I think we want to make sure that we have engagement with our community and make sure that we make sure that part of our mission statement is that we listen to our constituents and our ratepayers and our businesses and our visitors. So I'll leave it open to you, but I think engagement should be in there somewhere. Councillor Thompson?
I agree completely, especially if, as we grow, we want to bring people in who will be engaged, and we don't want to be a bedroom community of anywhere else where they just come, sleep here, and leave. So I think that's a critical addition. Thank you.
If we just go around the table, if anybody has any other ideas about the mission statement? Councillor Popke, anything to add at this time?
It looks pretty good to me.
Okay.
Words are my subject.
No, thoughts are. Councillor Tripp?
Can I come back in a second?
No. Yes, Councillor Tripp. Councillor Thompson, anything further? Councillor Levesque, you're on already. Oh, now you're off.
I would agree. I mean, community engagement and communication is about, like, really transparency. I mean, it is there. Transparency can mean a lot of things, but communication, I think, is a big piece of that.
So is that so am I hearing this was way too easy? That the council would like the mission statement to read, to provide an inclusive, engaged, safe community for all residents, businesses, and visitors by providing services in a cost-effective and transparent manner to encourage sustainable and future successful growth.
Yes, and now we'll get the input of Councillor Tripp on that.
I'm okay with it, but the caveat is traditionally a mission statement is usually very short and it speaks to why we exist. So the second part, once we get in by providing, the first part is really quite clear: to provide, and as amended, an inclusive, transparent, communicative, whatever we said, safe community for all residents, businesses, and visitors. That's really why we're here. How we do it falls into the next level if we get into mission statement, value, and objectives and pillars. The by providing services is the how. The mission is the what. Who are we? Why do we exist? We exist to provide an inclusive, safe community, The second part, and I know we're talking about strategic planning in the next session, but the by providing is the how we do it. I think that's why we've made this so long. It's just who we are, and then we go on into, how we're going to do it. And how we're going to do it is not part of a mission statement.
So it's more towards an operational then?
Correct.
Okay, so
How we do it is not.
let me, to summarize, I think, so what you're saying is to provide an inclusive, engaged, safe community for all residents, businesses, and visitors. End. And then the second part, the part at the end is the operational side of it, but we've kept it very concise of what our mission is, and then the next part is how we do it. So any thoughts on that, Councillor Thompson?
I know traditionally it's done that way, but I'm wondering where will anyone see the rest of that? Everybody says this same thing. This is what we're going to do. But I think the how, should be on that wall with the rest of it so people understand how we're doing it.
If I may, Mayor Weir, the mission statement is always really tied to a strategic plan, and a strategic plan has 3 key elements in it. And I think we're jumping ahead of the next agenda, but the by providing would really be the vision. How and what are we going to do? So it wouldn't be providing, it will be, to provide, or we will be providing, and the language gets more of an action-oriented verb. Services in a cost-effective, transparent manner to encourage is a perfect example of how how we are going to be that of which we want to be. We want to provide an inclusive, safe community for all businesses, residents, businesses. And our vision, how we're going to get there, is to provide services in a cost-effective, transparent. The two are always linked. It's very unusual just to have a mission statement without anything underneath it, because it just dangles and hangs there. But it gets into that structure. And I think we want to keep it fairly high level.
If I may,
But-
this is only for 2023. What's being discussed is only for 2023, because the next item is to discuss a strategic plan going forward. We're only looking at priorities and mission statement for 2023, so that, you know, when applying for grants, we can say, this is our mission statement, this is, so I understand what's being said. I just want to put that out as a reminder. This is only for this year, and then we're going to finesse it into, as Councillor Tripp suggested, like a mission, a vision, the key core competencies, the priorities. But this is high level, not getting into that level of detail at this time.
If I may, I think depending on what our timeline is for our strategic plan, which I would prefer sooner than later, but I think if we can nail down a proper mission statement and vision statement at that point, that will help us guide towards our strategic plan. Even though that, depending on when we get our strategic plan in, but I think if we set our parameters now with a mission statement and a vision statement, that's going to help us give direction on our strategic plan. From times that I've built strategic plans before, that's kind of the base you start with, and then you create your pillars afterwards, and so on. So I think even though this is let's say a temporary mission statement, I think it needs to be one that's overriding and overseeing the overall strategic plan going forward. Any other thoughts on that?
So may I suggest that this is what's being presented today, that it come back to the February meeting, so that council has time to review it, absorb, and give it consideration, and look at other strategic plans of neighboring municipalities or organizations?
Yeah, I think for myself, we've just received this, and I think, yes, we will need time to revisit this and go through it. But I think what we we need to kind of come to a consensus that what are we doing going forward? Are we going to have this mission statement as a guiding going forward for the strategic plan, and then create a vision statement so that we have the two bases to move forward with going with a strategic plan? But I think we can revisit those questions at the next meeting as well. Give us time to absorb and make notes. And so any other questions or comments at this time? Councillor Tripp?
Very quickly, thank you, Mayor Weir. So I understand the need for this for funding and timely, so bringing it back at the next meeting would be helpful. It gives us a chance to go around it. I would just like to plant the seed about possibly, even if we do run with this as is, but break it into a mission with a vision statement, so that we have the two bullets. We stand true because to what a mission and a vision is, because if this is going to be taken forward to help populate and frame a strategic plan, part of the development of a strategic plan is not just this table. It's about reaching out to ratepayers. It's about reaching out to our partners, and they would have input into what they feel is the mission. It's a council strategic plan, but we engage the community, we engage our partners, we engage other neighboring communities as need be. So we don't want to lock something in. This can be what we agree with at this table to help the CAO with their funding push with a current vision and mission, but knowing that it might be modified slightly as we go forward in the development of a strategic plan. So I'd support it on the condition that we know it's not cast in stone, that it will be modified once we get external input into it. Thank you.
I agree, but I think we need to sort of set down what we're looking at so that we can move forward. Start of our roadmap.
Yeah, I agree with separating into bullets, but I think the one at this point early on, it's as informative to me as it is to anyone else to have the how as part of that. Otherwise, we're just five people sitting around a table as usual, saying we're going to do great things. And then we'll do the formal, do it all properly. Thank you.
So do we have Allison, are we looking for a motion to move this forward, or do you want to?
No,
I think we have a lot of other parts of this presentation before we do.
So I
that,
think
correct?
what I'm going to suggest at this time is that if you have any thoughts or comments on this, send them to me in advance of the next meeting so that a document can be prepared to come forward for direction from council. And a recommendation will be put forward to council.
Questions, comments, agreement? All in, any motion? Movement? Yep, second. Okay, all in favor to make sure we get Allison her documentation and move this forward and put it to the next meeting. Thank you.
So the next was the priorities, and you all have lots of great ideas. Some of the duplicates, some are worded similar but close enough that I tried to group similar ideas together. So what I've done is created these 4 overarching priorities, and in the following slides they are broke down with various objectives or considerations. So we have create and support sustainable development, service delivery review, effective governance, and community infrastructure. So if we start with the create and support sustainable development, there is the needs assessment to determine the actual needs of the community. There were several comments about social housing, attainable housing, the medical center. But to be in a position to actually address this, we need to be able to demonstrate what the issue or the need is. A common theme was attract investment to the township. And this isn't residential, obviously. We need to attract commercial. We all know that I think it's like 98% of our taxes come from residential. So we need to look at how we can attract the investment to the municipality. We need to finalize the zoning bylaw and review our existing planning policies and determine if there are new policies that would be beneficial. And this could relate back to the needs assessment with regards to attainable housing or affordable housing. And the last item in this section is the marketing and branding project to create an identity for the township that is incorporated into the signage and messaging. There were suggestions about message boards, and so I think this is great, but what do we want our brand to look like before we start putting signs up? Are we content with our logo and our brand? And if not, then let's fix that before we start a big project. But that's why it's grouped together with marketing and branding. So I don't know if there's any questions on this.
Yeah, Allison, it's Jeff. I've just got 2 questions. One is, and maybe it's just ignorance on my part, finalize the new zoning bylaw. Like, I don't know what that means.
So the zoning bylaw, we actually got a grant with Whitewater to update our zoning bylaw. And it was put on hold due to the election because the consultant was ready to come in August to present to council and the public the new zoning bylaw, but it didn't make sense when that council was leaving. So I believe Eric's has been in discussions with the consultant to bring this forward to council in the next month or so to update our existing zoning bylaw.
Okay. The other one is on the marketing and branding. Like, when was that done last? Because I don't think never. Oh, okay. Because the logo is not that old, right? Is it?
It's 21 years old.
Oh, I think
Or whenever the township was created. I
Okay.
believe when the logo was created.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on this section? Councillor Thompson?
I think it should belong in here, but I think one of our, I know I talked to you about asset management planning, but one of our biggest assets is the natural environment. And if things go wrong in the natural environment, then that affects all of our other assets, our built assets, our waterfront, or our economic. So I know Renee said staff it's been a tough thing just getting the asset management plan to the point where it is, and adding natural assets to it would be a tough ask. But I'm thinking we could do that by building a plan, like a committee to do just that, to maybe find funding, to do research. There, like Comox Valley, where they had a lot of flooding, they got almost all of the federal money to do LiDAR scanning to find out where all their watersheds were, so they could know where it's going to plan, so they could plan, et cetera. So that's the sort of thing that a committee would do, and it wouldn't take staff. But I think it's very important that we add natural, and I'm not talking about just trails, I'm talking about the whole ecosystem, just to know what they are and what to take care of. Things like the Adirondack to Algonquin, the A2A wildlife corridor. Our whole township is right along that corridor. We have to work with them, and that's what a committee would do, work with them to make sure we don't block off natural paths and end up with carnage on our roads with deer and or ruining our hunting economy or that sort of thing. So that's how I propose it could be added to that.
Yeah. So I just want to clarify that. When I received that question, I responded more on the asset management plan infrastructure base. So for us, it's infrastructure assets. So my intent there was to specify that it doesn't fall under asset management plan infrastructure assets, which is what we have today, compared to this is another element, which is natural assets. And then, but I agree, it falls more into it's a planning piece for the whole township and what's out there. So not that we would never do it, it just didn't fall within the infrastructure of asset management plan right now versus this is another component.
Right, I appreciate that. But it is, I mean, there are municipalities all across Canada and the world that are doing this. And it is part of the asset management plan, because you can do things like, what is the value of a stream versus the value of a pipe? The stream will slow down water, it'll feed the ecosystem, it'll clean, once it gets into a swamp, it'll clean. You can put a monetary value on that versus a pipe. Same with a water retention, stormwater pond, lagoon. To do an engineered one, how much is that? So if we start, Hazel McCallion, who just passed away, Hurricane Hazel, said the only thing she regretted over her 30-some years on council in Mississauga was allowing urban sprawl and building on farmland. That's the only thing, because they're still paying for it, and we don't want to make those mistakes, and that's why.
It's a controlled development where you're
Yes, and
controlling
it's
development, so yes.
Yeah, it's very critical for land use planning as well. It's all planning as well as emergency planning, which is another thing that I think we need to make priority. Thank you.
Okay, so just a couple comments to that before moving on. That's why it's the reviewing of the policy to see if there are new policies that need to be created. And with regard to committees, that's currently under the effective governance, because there's a committee review currently ongoing, and that will be coming back to council. So not disagreeing, it's just I can't put every thought, but that's where I've kind of put it, because I know that was something that was discussed.
Okay. Thank you. Any further on this slide, or shall we move forward? There we are.
Okay, so next is the service delivery review, is focus on core services and what additional services any should be offered. And the next item is the social and media communication strategy. Review and update the current strategy and how or if electronic signs or other resources fit into the plan. So we currently do have a communication plan that is not that old, but it can always, we'll bring it back. We can look at it, see what needs to be changed or revised, and make sure that the public are aware as well as council on the strategy. So I don't know if there's any questions on this one.
Do we have any questions? None seen. Allison, you can move forward.
Effective governance is a new strategic plan, which we've touched on. There's the review of the current organizational structure and determine ideal structure of the organization and how it can be attained, and the committee review and creation of committees.
Do we have any questions, comments on this slide? Councilor Levesque?
The only thing I would say there, and it could be just too operational, is how do we ensure that we are going to be effective and make sure that we have training and professional development all built in. Now, we are doing that, but it's not called out there. So how do you do effective governance with lay people to ensure that we're making the right decisions down the road? But whether or not anything needs to change, that's the question.
So maybe it's an ongoing commitment to education.
Councilor Levesque, support?
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking you guys for thoughts, right? Because we're all in the same boat, right? And every new council is going to go through the same thing. You know, when we walk out the door and we're committed to making decisions, the right decisions, hopefully, how do we make sure that happens?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so ongoing education, commitment, and I think tied in with that goes back to your prior slide of communication strategy. How do we communicate effectively as one to our constituents?
Okay. And then the last slide is the community infrastructure. So take consideration to active transportation as part of capital projects and provide information to council on seasonally maintained roads. Consider designation of heritage roads such as Canelli Mountain Road, and maintain, improve, and expand where necessary infrastructure to ensure the needs and safety of public are addressed.
Any questions, comments? Councilor Levesque?
What I don't see here, so I agree on all that. What I don't see here is any talk about waterfront development, or not just for Calabogie, but other areas throughout the township. Like we've got, new boat launch up in Griffith, and there's probably other places that I'm not aware of that we might want to consider to support that. I mean, it's community infrastructure, but there's a tourism aspect that I don't see here as well. That's how do we kind of mold that into there?
So like a promotion of our township facilities and resources.
Well, specific to waterfront and tourism, I mean, tourism is a big part of our piece here, right? And a lot of the reasons they're here is for nature and water and all those good things. So how do we promote that and bring that into the fold?
That also will tie us back into our communication as well.
Yeah.
So that all, as we can all see now.
And the branding
and the branding.
So on. So like, what are we and what do we want to be?
It's all intertwined. Yeah.
I think we see ourselves a lot as residents, in which we are, but I think there's a lot of things we kind of take for granted just by living here. And, we have a lot to offer. And how do we promote that and make sure that we not just promote it, but we develop it, that we can use it properly.
Councillor Thompson?
And that all ties back into including natural assets in our plans.
Yeah.
Is there any?
Maybe a promotion and development of township resources and facilities.
Promotion and development. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it also, I didn't catch it, but I think our facilities and I'm trying to think of the proper way to put this, our natural resources, our natural attractions, resources, our trails, whether that be the ATV, sorry, we're losing TV there for a second. So I think we need to somehow include that our natural destinations, natural destinations that are attributed to us.
Or include heritage, natural heritage in the heritage.
Yep. Councillor Poppy.
I think any type of infrastructure, anything we do, natural, urban, I think it's important to establish private property before anything sort of commences. Just so, like, people are pretty territorial out here, and that leads me into an issue, an ongoing issue, I guess, regarding the ski trail that we approved the go-ahead for at the last council meeting. It's right in the middle of private property, or it's on private property. So as much as everybody'd like to see that something like that would go ahead, we have to make sure that the well-defined boundaries are established, marking the private territory, not to step on anybody's toes.
Thank you.
So for this, I'm going to propose that I'll make a few changes to this document and I'll send it around again. And then if you can provide any feedback or comments prior to the February council meeting, that'd be great.
Anything further?
I think what's missing is the community engagement. We say we're now saying, I think, that that's very important, but I'm wondering where that, with every page is upside down, every second page. So I'm having trouble turning pages, but yeah, I'm not sure where that would fit.
I believe under the effective governance.
Governance? Yeah, effective government. And committee review and creation of committees?
Yeah, I think we can make it 2 separate points. I think the engagement of the public.
Right. And the last thing that I feel is a big priority is emergency management. We have a plan, but there's a new head of emergency management Ontario since April last year, and he is really changing things, or he's in the process of changing things. I met him at the Roma conference, and he said, call me. So we've got a situation where we've had the derecho, the tornado, we get floods, we all know that. But what we need to do is develop the plan so that if we need to evacuate residents, that we have an agreement with hotels in other areas that we know where the people will meet. So EMO is willing to send out a team. I don't know what the costs are. I tried to get hold of them earlier, but we've been.
I believe there needs to be some training on emergency management. We have those things in place. It's part of our handbook, which is not a public document. So I will bring forward a training session on emergency management because it does speak to those very items. We have a very lengthy document which has all the numbers of various hotels, cabins available that can house people in the event we need to evacuate. Within the handbook, it does speak to an evacuation plan. So we have those things in place, but due to the sensitive nature, they're not public documents, and that's not uncommon. That's the way it is across the board. But I will bring something forward to speak to that, and then we can decide where we need to go from there with regards to emergency management. Okay,
the public part of it is probably what's missing.
So I think too that in this context right now, that would kind of fall under the service delivery review, the core services and determination. So I think that would be encompassed within the service delivery review.
Yep.
Okay. Do we have any other further questions or comments or closing from Allison on this part? Nothing seen here. Okay.
So the next item is the new strategic plan, which is 5.01.3 for anyone following along. So we've been talking about what we're looking at for 2023, but we all recognize that the current strategic plan is outdated. I've had discussions about the existing strategic plan, and there seems to be a misconception that there was no public consultation when it was created. That is false. There was surveys done, there was public events where people could come in and they engaged with the facilitator. So it was open, people had the opportunity to participate. Unfortunately, turnout was low, which is something we continuously struggle with, but by no means was it done solely by council. The community was engaged. Managers were asked questions for input. Members of councils were interviewed individually. So if you've heard that, it's incorrect, is all I can say. Moving forward to the new strategic plan is to give consideration on how we would like to proceed. There's different options. What in 2017 or 2016, the council of the day chose to utilize the Queen's University Business Center. They would come and do all the interviews and data collection and meetings and prepare the document as we now have. So that's still, I believe that's a service they continue to offer. We can look at doing it internally. We can look at one point, a neighboring mayor had offered to lead such a project. Or we can look at hiring a consultant. So which is what the majority of municipalities do, is they do look to a consultant to lead such a project. So it's just, I think there needs to be a discussion. So staff or I know what council's thoughts are. So not that we need to decide today, but so that if we are considering moving forward with an RFP, that one can be created.
Okay. I think if we do have a lot of expertise on strategic plan on council, but I also think at the same time that should not be so naive to think that possibly a hybrid model might be pertinent in that council could meet and create the structure and the base for it and have an idealism of which way we want to go. And then how do we progress with that is if we move forward with a consultant to come in to assist on doing the public consultation, consultation with municipalities associated with this, consultation with the county, because a lot of strategic plan, you have to understand too, is also flows downhill. How do we tie into the county? How does the county tie into the province? How does the province tie into the federal? Because if in doing it that way, it also opens up, greedily enough, it opens up grants for us because we fall into those areas. So I would like to propose that we start on the ground, creating our basis of a strategic plan on how we'd like to do it. Number one, it gets our input, and then it also reduces cost of your consultant fees as well over the long run. I'm making that assumption. It may be that we create a baseline that the consultant says this will never work, but then we know. But and I'll open up to everybody else. But I think that if we create a basis and then move forward with a consultant at the interview stage and the finalization, I think it would be appropriate. But I'm, as I say, I'm one person speaking. I'm not council, so I would love to have everybody else's input. Councilor Thompson.
I agree with that. It'd be good to do a hybrid, save costs, but still make sure that our vision, our mission, all those things are, we get the feedback we want. The real difficulty, as Allison said, is getting that public engagement. We can hire people to engage the public, but will the public come? I mean, the best way to get people, we all know, to a meeting is tick them off. You know, like the waterfront committee, the waterfront meeting, lots of people out there, but would they have shown up if you're saying, we'd like your input about what to do with the waterfront? This is just the nature of public engagement. There was one place I went to do a video for FCM, that Williams Lake, BC, yeah. They actually went out to, say, Canada Day. They had people go out to where people are already gathering, and they had boards and Post-it notes and just, you know, what do you think? What do you, you know, and that was to do this action. It was actually a sustainability project, but anyhow, it's just a thought. We need to come up with creative ways to engage the public.
So provide donuts.
Beyond donuts.
Okay. Councillor Tripp?
Thank you. I too am a supporter of a hybrid model. I think there is a role for the consultant to be engaged, but I've also, in my experience, found that the consultant is more of a minor player in this. They're the mechanics on the ground, the intellectual, the strategic, the vision, the direction of a plan really falls to us as council, and to the residents. But the work involved in doing that outreach, the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats, is best done by a consultant. And certainly at our level, a consultant to come in to work us through that exercise, because it's hard if you're in the center of the pool to move the water. If you're outside of that system, it's an easier opportunity to direct and pull from us that of which we need to land on a really good, solid SWOT analysis. Our previous discussion on setting the vision and the priorities for the next year started to sound like the development of a strat plan. And I would suggest we start this process sooner than later, because we're starting down this road. And at the end of the day, the strat plan is a really strong tool for us. Coming into 24 with the budget exercise, all of the strat plans, both domestic and international plans that I've been involved with or seen built, the budgets and the work plans and everything tie into the strategic plan. So when we get a budget next year, or when we're going for funding, beside each activity, it's tied to the specific deliverable objective within the plan. So it begs us as council, as a management tool, if we are making a decision, we need to be able to show how it relates to that of which the strat plan, the community, is supporting. And if we're not spending money on it, we have to be asked why. If we are spending money on things that aren't seen as a priority in the plan, again, we're asked why. So it's a really important tool. And I would suggest if we start the process now, we'd have it in place end of year and allow us then into the next budget session to link the budget to the plan in a year where I think we're going to be asked hard questions. So the consultant side works really well. I do think, as Mayor Weir said, we have the expertise around the table to do the bulk of the work. And respect to what Allison had indicated about going out to the community, there are creative ways. The Canada Day, putting up a board and asking people as they're walking by just to fill in a thing, a sticky note, stick it on the board in terms of, we'd phrase it differently, but their SWOT analysis, what are we really good at? Where are the opportunities? What concerns you? And just one word, we bring that back. And a consultant can do the data mining. If we run SurveyMonkey, the input from this plan can't just be from our intellectual collection at the table. It's about going to the Ministry for Data on Population Growth, shifts in demographics, shifts in economics, going to local businesses, going to local infrastructures to determine what the shifts are demographically and statistically, and then those numbers come back to help us form an informed decision, that we're not just deciding on goodwill what we think is a priority. So all that long message, sorry to say, I think First is, I think, sooner than later, and I do agree with a hybrid model that would help us pick up the pieces as we go forward on it.
And I think you actually hit upon something that probably didn't come out too clear, but having a strat plan and having things tied to it, without that, we won't get grant money. We need to show and have a structure of what we're doing prior to asking for that money. We need to be able to tie it back into things. And you brought that out, but not maybe as clear for everybody that's viewing. So I thank you.
And to add to that, having that good strategic plan allows us to have shovel-ready projects, have a whole bunch of them, which I know that you've always been doing, but it makes it clearer so that when you do go, then when that grant opportunity opens up, that you have a chance to say, yep, got one ready, take this one.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? None seen at this time.
So we will move in to a closed session. That the council of January 31st, 2023 at 2:58 enter into a closed session pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act regarding litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the land or local board's litigation, and personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, manager, planning and development.
Do we have a mover to move into closed session? Councillor Popke, second. Councillor Levesque, all in favor to move into closed session? Unanimous, moving into closed session?
that the council meeting of January 31st, 2023 move back into open session at 3:37.
Move it. Do we have a mover? Counselor Thompson, second, Counselor Levesque. All in favor to move to open? Unanimous, so moved to open.
The council instructs the following as a result of the closed meeting item. Litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality of a local board. Litigation was an information item, and personal matters about an identified individual, including municipal or local board employees, manager of planning and development. It was also an information item.
Mover, Counselor Thompson, second, Counselor Tripp. All in favor? Unanimous, so moved.
Be it resolved that the following bylaw 10-2023 confirmatory be deemed a first, second, and final time and passed by council at the special council meeting held this January 31st, 2023.
Motion, Counselor Thompson, second, Counselor Popke. All in favor? All in favor. Unanimous? So moved. Thank
And
you.
that the special council meeting of January 31st, 2023 be adjourned at 3:38.
Mover? Counselor Popke, second, Counselor Tripp. All in favor? All in favor? So moved. Thank you all.